Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tera Vanachari. Jamuna Tera Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Okay, so we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 9th Chapter, text 33. And yeah, so does everyone have it? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so I guess while we wait for this, just a brief summary of what this chapter is about. It's Brahma's prayers for creative energy. So he's woken up and he's on the lotus of Mahavishnu. He's on, sorry, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And he's wondering, he's in a state of bewilderment. He's very confused. Everything's dark. He's up here on this flower. And he's wondering what's going on. So now he's offering many nice prayers about, well, prayers for empowerment, how to create the universe, how to create all the different living entities. And yeah, it's quite nice. Okay, so we have it. D3. Yada rahitam atmanam bhutendriya gunashai svarupena mayopetam pasyan swarajam richati. Yada rahitam atmanam bhutendriya gunashai svarupena mayopetam pasyan swarajam richati. Yada rahitam atmanam bhutendriya gunashai Svarupena mayopetam pasyan swarajam richati. Please chant. Yadarahitam atmanam Putendriya gunashai Svarupena mayopetam Pasyan swarajam vichati. Dharahitam atmanam Yada when Rahitam freed from Atmanam self Bhuta material elements Indriya material senses Guna ashai under the influence of the material modes of nature Svarupena in pure existence Maya by me Upetam approaching Pasyan by seeing Swarajam spiritual kingdom Richati enjoy. Translation: when you are free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all influences of the modes of material nature, you will realize your pure form in my association. At that time, you will be situated in pure consciousness. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that a person whose only desire is to render transcendental loving service to the Lord is a free person in any condition of material existence. That service attitude is the swarup or real form of the living entity. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also confirms this statement by declaring that the real spiritual form of the living entity is eternal servitorship to the Supreme Lord. The Mayavad school shudders at the thought of a service attitude in the living entity, not knowing that in the transcendental world, the service of the Lord is based on transcendental love. Transcendental loving service is never to be compared to the forced service of the material world. In the material world, even if one is under the conception that he is no one's servant, he is still the servant of his senses. And under the dictation of the he is still the servant of his senses under the dictation of the material modes. Factually, no one is master here in the material world, and therefore the servants of the senses have a very bad experience of servitude. They shudder at the thought of service because they have no knowledge of the transcendental position. In transcendental loving service, the servitor is as free as the Lord. The Lord is Farat, or fully independent, and the servant is also fully independent, or Swarat, in the spiritual atmosphere, because there is no forced service. There, the transcendental loving service is due to spontaneous love. A reflected glimpse of such service is experienced in the service of the mother unto the son, the friend's service unto the friend, or the wife's service unto the husband. These reflections of service by friends, parents, or wives are not forced, but are due only to love. Here in the material world, however, the loving service is only a reflection. The real service, or service in Swarup, is present in the transcendental world in association with the Lord. The very same service in transcendental love can be practiced in devotion here. This verse is also applicable to the Jnani school. The enlightened Jnani, when free from all material contaminations, namely the gross and subtle bodies, together with the senses of the material modes of nature, is placed in the Supreme and is thus liberated from material bondage. The Jnanis and the devotees are actually in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination. But whereas the Jnanis remain pacified on the platform of simple understanding, the devotees develop further spiritual advancement in loving service. The devotees develop a spiritual individuality in their spontaneous service attitude, which is enhanced on and on up to the point of Madhurya Rasa, or transcendental loving service, reciprocated between the lover and the beloved. Om Agyantamirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kurati Vachalam Pangam Rangayate Girim Yakripatamam Bande Shri Gurun Divataranam Vancha Kalpatirubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivastari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, when I was looking at the overview of all the verses we've been reading from this chapter, Brahma's prayers for creative energy, it's nice to hear these the mood of great personalities like this in approaching Krishna, because we can try and follow that also. So, Brahma is such a great personality. He's got so much power. He's in such a big position. He's not just a GBC or a temple president or this or that. He's, GBC of the universe. So he's got a lot of responsibility, and a lot of respect is offered to him. But his submission is so humble. He's telling the Lord that I don't know anything. I'm bewildered. I don't understand how I'm supposed to continue in this position. What do I do? So, this is the mood of a disciple, and it's how the disciple becomes empowered through the guru, through the previous acharyas. Not that by our own intelligence, by our own, punditry or our own learning, that we just can grab as much knowledge as we want, do this, do that. But it's by the blessings. It's by the blessings, and also by austerity that we perform, as Krishna is instructing Brahma in this chapter, that you perform penance and austerities, and then from within your heart, you'll understand all of this knowledge of what needs to be done. So it's a very natural process. One serves the previous teachers, one serves Krishna, and within the heart, he reveals all that needs to be known to continue that service. So, yeah, this is nice example set by Brahma. And also something I was noticing in, throughout the Bhagavatam, but also right now I've been reading Ramayan, which is leading up to Ram Navami. And something that comes up again and again and again throughout all the Vedic Shastras, but particularly I've been noticing it in the Ramayana, is that there's so many of the characters that are, physically strong, but their actual power, their actual strength comes from tapasya. They, so many of even Rakshasas, they perform different acts of asceticism, different austerities, very severe austerities that they perform in order to get blessings from different deities like Brahma, Shiva, Agni, all these different personalities. They give blessings even to the Rakshasas. What to speak of the rishis and the munis and different things like that. And by that tapasya, by that austerity, and trying to appease certain persons, one gets spiritual power. So this is, like a mystic siddhis, you could say. They get, different things, brahmastra, they get the, empowered mantras from Agni Dev or from this or that. And in the end, I think it's Agastya Muni, he gives Lord Ram the Brahma Hridaya prayers, which empowers him to kill Ravana. So these are like mystic, but also even bodily. If we want to grow, if we want to improve, if we want to become stronger, it requires tapasya. You have to lift weights, you have to run. All these things are painful and you don't actually want to do it, but to achieve a certain purpose, you have to undergo some suffering, some austerity. So in spiritual life, of course, we have to do exactly the same thing. It doesn't just come easy. Nothing's free in the material world. So we have to undergo spiritual austerity, spiritual tapasya. Mainly, given in this age, is chanting of the holy names, Hare Krishna, and trying to spread that, trying to give that to others, which is actually such a very insignificant austerity. Like Lord Chandas Thakur prays that the process Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have come to give is Kevalananda Kanda. It's simply blissful. There's nothing, there's no like really severe, standing on the top of a mountain on our tippy toes and lighting a fire in the middle of the desert and, sitting there. It's very blissful and it's very simple, but the mind is so conditioned that it makes it difficult. It makes it, puts up a lot of resistance. But actually the process is very simple. So, so our spiritual tapasya, our spiritual austerity, is trying to practice ourselves very seriously, but also trying to give it to others. And coming back to this verse in particular, when I first read it, I was thinking, wow, this quite easily could be misconstrued by impersonal scholars. When you're free from the gross and subtle bodies and your senses are free from, modes of material nature, material influence, then you'll realize you're pure form. And at that time, you'll be situated in pure consciousness. So that sounds like, for a Brahmavadi or a Mayavadi or impersonal, that's like, wow, great. That sounds just what I'm into, pure consciousness and free from material body, subtle body. So it sounds exactly like Brahman liberation, Brahman realization, which Prabhupada clarifies in the later part of the purport. It actually does also apply in that way. He says the verse is also applicable to the Jnani school. The enlightened Jnani, when free from all material contaminations, is placed in the Supreme and is thus liberated from material bondage. And then he says something very interesting. He said, the Jnanis and the devotees are actually in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination. But whereas the Jnanis remain pacified on the platform of simple understanding, the devotees develop further spiritual advancement and loving service. So it's not necessarily that the Jnanis are wrong in the sense that, yes, we do get liberated. We, coming to the Brahman platform, being free from all material contamination. But the devotees, they go further. They develop further advancement and loving service. And we learn what that is in Bhagavatam 2nd canto. Nirodho shanu shayanam atmana sahashaktibihi muktir hedvanyata rupam svarupena vyavastitihi. Which means that the merging of the living entity, the second half really is relevant. The merging of the living entity along with his conditional living tendency with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. And here's the relevant point. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle bodies. So, our understanding in the personal school is that, yes, we do become free from the material body, we do become free from the material mind, and identifying with them, this false identity that I'm, so-and-so from New Zealand, or I'm this many years old, I have this color hair, or, I like this kind of food, or these kind of things. These are the false identification. But then we become liberated, we become free from that, which is false because it's temporary. But then we do have an actual real personality also, the swarup, the real form, the real identity, which has no material contamination. It has no misplaced tendency for service also, which is hinted in this verse. And there's a nice statement in this purport where it's being explained that the swarup, or the natural inseparable characteristic of the soul, what is the swarup of the soul? Serve Krishna and Nityadas, exactly. So the natural characteristic of the soul is service. And you can see that amongst every form of life, every living entity, whatever species, whatever planet, whatever race, whatever this, that, doesn't matter. Every living entity is engaged in serving others and or serving itself. So we can't escape that, but we can utilize it to its perfection in serving Krishna, which actually makes us free. As also is said in this verse, that service means freedom. So in our material bondage, in our material contaminated state, our experience has been that we've served so many things and we're still not satisfied. We're still not feeling satiated. We serve someone and then they exploit us, or we serve someone and we expect some great thing, we expect some great outcome, some gain from it for ourselves. Then we become frustrated because it doesn't work out. It's not what we thought it would be, so on and so forth. But serving Krishna, service to Krishna, actually does give. It fulfills all of our desires. It fulfills all expectations and more than we ever could. So in that sense, service means freedom, because we become liberated, we become free from the entanglement of having to enjoy the fruits and having to suffer the you could say the thorns of our karma. Because most people in the material world, when we speak of karma, they think, well, okay, I want to get rid of the bad stuff and I want to keep the good stuff, and I want to avoid the suffering, but I want to enjoy the fruits, the nice things. But it doesn't exactly work like that, because as soon as you have impious karma, which causes suffering, then you automatically you have to have the enjoyment also, and vice versa. If you have enjoyment, you have to have suffering. There can't be in the material world. It's not one-sided. There has to be both. So the only way to actually become free from that cycle of karma is to engage in transcendental acts and transcendental service to Krishna, which is completely free from the bondage of karma, has no tint. And it's said that actually there's sukriti, which is just mundane pious credit. But one can't purchase devotional service with mundane pious credit. We need a special kind of sukriti called bhakti-onmukhi sukriti, which is only obtainable by engaging in devotional service, whether knowingly or unknowingly. That's why we have agyata sukriti also, means unknowingly engaging in some service or some act that is favorable to Krishna or to the devotees, to devotional service. And that builds up in our bank account of devotional credit, transcendental credit. It builds up and builds up and builds up into the point where we can actually purchase entrance into the house of bhakti. And we can begin inquiring about devotional service. So it's not just ordinary people that actually come to the temple after we preach to them and are inquisitive or interested. They're actually very, very special. But as we see many times, they're also not completely ready yet. They come, but they still have many attachments to whatever it is in the material world. But we have to fan their spark. We have to try and encourage the inquisitiveness in devotional service and inspire them that should win over their material bondage, material attachments that are still lingering. And in terms of the aspect of service, Radhanath Maharaj gave a nice class I was listening to, I don't know how long time ago, but I remember a really nice point that he was saying in the class. And it's that when Krishna actually wants to bestow his mercy upon us or upon someone, then he gives them the opportunity for service. So it's not a burden, it's not a chore, it's not, so many things we might think, but it's actually Krishna personally coming in that form and wanting to give us his mercy, because we only have so much time in our life. We might have, say, 60, 70 years, and there's unlimited activities we could do to fill up that time. But Krishna understands perfectly that the perfection of our life and the ultimate success we can achieve is to engage that time in his service in whatever form that we have, in whatever form is given to us. That's how he bestows his mercy, is by giving us that service. And of course, Krishna generally doesn't come directly to us and say, okay, I want you to clean those pots, or, I want you to talk to that person, give him a book. Sometimes we do get that in the heart. We get a very strong impulse, which is, super soul Krishna in the heart. And if we're the more transparent that we are to transmit Krishna's mercy, transmit Krishna's guidance, and to act upon it, then the more we can be empowered, the more we can actually do wonderful things. We just have to get out of the way. So, but yeah, generally, for most of us, Krishna doesn't, come and whisper, "Hey, I want some sandish for breakfast. I want some aloo paratha." So, how does that request for service? How does that benediction of service comes through the guru, comes through our spiritual master. He assigns us, I want you to do this service, I want you to do that service. And also through the Vaishnavas, who are authorized by Guru, who Guru puts us under the care of. So it's something nice to meditate on, that when we're asked for service, when we're asked for some, or when we see, not even necessarily we're directly, confronted with being asked for service, but when we see something needs to be done, we can understand this is our, Guru asking us, and we can ask, how would we respond? If our Guru is coming and saying, through whoever, Harivilas Prabhu or Hamsarupa Prabhu or one of our authorities, they're saying, can you do this service? And maybe we're feeling tired, maybe we're feeling this, maybe we're feeling that. But how would we respond? If Prabhupada came, if our Guru came and said, can you do this service? Would we be super enthusiastic and, yes, Gurudev, do anything you want? How do you want me to do it? When should I do it? All these things. So, yeah, we can try and meditate like that it's blessing coming from them. And my spiritual master actually had a really funny pastime like this with Srila Prabhupada and with Tamo Krishna Maharaj. Spiritual master is Holiness Giriraj Swami. And Giriraj Maharaj was temple president in Juhu, Bombay in the 1970s, up until, I forget what year, something like 85. But anyway, he saw the completion of the temple on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, and it was like a insane amount of suffering and austerity, and we have some difficulties sometimes nowadays in our movement. Like some difficult people live in the temple, or there's some fights going on, or we don't get enough mahaprasadam, or there's not enough sweet rice or something. It's a big deal. But I was just hearing about the austerities the devotees had to go through in Juhu in those days. They're living in first of all, they had no money at all, like no money. So they had to go out all day, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, in the hot Mumbai, Juhu. Well, actually, they would go into Mumbai from Juhu, which was like an hour to an hour and a half train ride on a really crowded Indian trains. Whoever's been on them before, it's not fun. It's like a forced, forcibly being squashed. And they would go into the city, and then they would have to go and beg, to different business owners, mostly wealthy business owners. They would try and convince them to join the life membership program, which was you give a certain amount of money as a donation to help support the temple, help the Krishna consciousness movement grow. and in return you'll get different like benefits. Like you can visit our temples and stay in our guest houses for a certain amount of times a year, and you get all our books, and you're like one of our patron members, all these things. So he had to go and do that. And also the weather was sweltering hot coming from America. We're not used to very, very extreme temperatures or extreme humidity. So it's very austere. And they'd come back after 8-10 hours collecting. Some days they would collect nothing. Some days they would collect, from 4 or 5 people. And they'd come all the way back to the temple, and the prasadam would be some, boiled dal that was collected that was rotten, or it was eaten by different insects, but they just washed it off and had to boil it and eat it, with maybe 1 carrot, some tomato in it for 20 people. And some, the bottom part of rice, I don't know, how do you explain it? Bottom part of the rice is very starchy, very quite kind of indigestible. It's not very nice, it's not very palatable. And very, very insufficient food. And then so they'd have that, basically nothing food. And then they'd sleep on the ground, bare cement, in a tin-roofed enclosure, which was infested with rats and bats and snakes and mosquitoes. So you come back after a long day on Sankirtan and Haribol, where's the prasad? Okay, that's it. Oh, it's not so bad. And then you go to sleep and you're getting bit by mosquitoes constantly. And then rats would actually come and would bite them, and they'd wake up in the morning and there'd be blood all over the floor because the rats would be eating at their bodies. So this is the austerities devotees in those days were undergoing, but as it was all done in service to their spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada, it's performed joyfully performed. And we can also experience that same joy, that same bliss, by engaging, doing everything for the pleasure of our spiritual master. And by seeing things in that way, we can overcome whatever difficulty. So anyway, he was temple president in that situation. And a little bit later years, between 75 and 77, they built the guest house, and Srila Prabhupada's room was there, and there was a very big gap between where Prabhupada's room was. So there was Prabhupada and the lobby. So Prabhupada's room was there. There was a set of doors at Prabhupada's room. Then there was a long corridor with another set of doors, and then there was a final set of doors at the end, I believe. So 3 sets of doors and a long passageway. And Prabhupada was really absorbed in translating, and so devotees didn't want to disturb him at that time. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the secretary, and he was staying in the lobby. And my spiritual master, Giriraj Swami, he came to talk with Tamal Krishna Maharaj about something. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, shh, quiet. Prabhupada's working, so we can talk, but you have to be very quiet. And so, my spiritual master was talking with him about something. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, well, I have a bank check, a check for the bank that we want, that I want you to go and cash. I want you to go and deposit into the bank. And my spiritual master's comments, he says that I was thinking that, well, I'm the temple president. Like, so many people could go and cash a check, but not many can do the service that I'm doing. Not many people can perform the service that I am. So I think someone else should go do it. So then he said that to Tamal Krishna Goswami. He said, I think someone else should go do it because, I have other services, and, someone else can. It's a very easy thing. I'm the temple president. And And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was insisting, no, I think you should do it. And then my Guru Maharaj was back and forth, no, I have other things. And so as this was going on, all in whispers, very, 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 very far from where Prabhupada's room is in Juhu. And as this is going on, they hear Prabhupada's bell ring, ding, 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 ding. And they think, oh no, were we too loud, or did we disturb him? Is he calling us? I need to chastise us. What's going on? So they came into the room and obeisances to Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada just very casually said that, he just started talking, oh, how are you? Oh, we're doing okay, Prabhupada. And then he looked at my spiritual master right in the eyes, and he said, if the spiritual master wants you to do any service for him, essentially this is what he was saying. If the spiritual master wants you to do any service for him, you should never think that, you're too important, or that it's a burden. And then he gave the exact example. He said, for example, if the spiritual master wants you to go to the bank, then, you should do it. It's a very simple thing. It's very easy. And my Guru Maharaj said he was just like amazed at Prabhupada's mystic power, or whatever it was, that there's no way he could have humanly heard someone that far away, through so many closed doors. But my Guru Maharaj felt that within his heart, Krishna was instructing him, or Prabhupada as external manifestation of the Super Soul, was instructing him on Krishna's behalf that no service is too small, or no service is too, is below us to be able to do on behalf of the spiritual master, on behalf of Krishna. So even the temple president, going to bank a check, that seems like, understandably so many people could do it. But yeah, Krishna really wants to see the surrender of the heart. He doesn't want to see how big a devotee we are, how learned we are, how, how austere we are, how renounced we are. All these things are actually, they only help us attain, they're only useful in devotional service if we have humility. Because if we don't have humility, if we don't have surrender of the heart, then they just make us proud. They just become anarthas, actually. And I won't describe it, but there's a pastime, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's actually not a pastime, it's an instructive story in Upakyan Upadesh that he describes about a party of people that are going to a wedding, and it's up the river, and the boatman, anyway, most of you probably know the story, and there's a boatman, and all the family gets in the boat, and then it's nighttime, they all go to sleep, and the boatman's paddling all night so fiercely, very intense paddling, and he's sweating, and he's like, crying out. And then in the morning, the sun comes up, the family wakes up, they see they're in exactly the same place, and they're thinking, what's going on? And they start chastising the boatman that, you rascal, we're paying you, and you didn't go anywhere, you just slept all night. And he says, no, I was working so hard. Look, I'm sweating, I'm exhausted, I'm so tired. And then they said, well, then why haven't we moved anywhere? And they examine, and he didn't pull up the anchor. The anchor is still in the water. So practicing devotional service while maintaining pride in our heart is exactly like that. And we may be doing so many things, we may be working so hard, we may be, externally sweating and doing so many vigorous activities, but as long as we still have that, as long as we're still holding on to that pride, to that reluctance to humble ourselves before the devotees and before our spiritual master, before Krishna, then it's like that anchor, it weighs us down. So we won't go very far. I mean, ultimately, yeah, we won't go anywhere. So these are just some thoughts I had. If anyone would like to share comments or questions, please feel free to now. Heinrich Prabhu. We just have a microphone. I don't know where it is.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
It's good enough. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for a nice lecture. So, I just want to ask about this last statement that you explained as anchor. Have if we have it, can you give more detail around that? So it's possible to take out the anchor, or just cut the chain and just let it go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a gradual process. So it's not, it's very rare that we have examples in our Shastra where someone just gives up all material attachments in a few seconds, like Maharaj Katvanga, or in a few days or in a few months, and they become perfect. It's very rare. So, yeah, I mean, of course we can give up the anchor. We have complete free will. We have complete independence in that sense. But we also have to pace ourselves generally, It takes time and also generally a lot of slapping around. Krishna slaps us around to make us realize, how proud we are, how much, lust, how much anger, how much greed we actually do have in the heart that we don't notice or we don't see. So yeah, it's like a constant endeavor that we have to be making every moment to try and give up these things, give up the lower things, accept the higher. Like there's a nice saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So that means vigilance, meaning always being alert. So the price of real freedom, the price of freedom from the mind, from the senses, from material ego, from the material world, is eternal vigilance. You have to be always alert, always aware that is my mind going off now, and am I being inattentive to my service? Am I being inattentive in my chanting? Am I, acting in a way that's, not that I'm not qualified for? So we have to be always, alert, aware of that, and in that way we can let go of pride, let go of anchor. Many different anarthas can act as that anchor. For each of us, we have an individual thing that's weighing us down more than others. So, yeah, I mean, of course, by engaging in devotional service with pure intentions, it will become, we'll let it go. We'll let go of these lower things. But, yeah, then it becomes an interesting question. Well, what to do if I'm engaging in devotional service with the wrong intentions? Because then it can be difficult to correct ourselves, because someone can say, well, just chant Hare Krishna Prabhu, or just go out on Sankirtan, just do this, do that. It's like, well, I'm doing that. I've been doing that for 20 years. I've been doing that for 30 years. But the problem is in the heart. The problem is in the heart. I'm doing it because I want name, I want fame, I want, I'm, secretly taking some money, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But the question then can come, well, if I'm doing it with the wrong intention, then how can I come to the platform of doing it with the right intention? And one powerful way that can be done is by association with very pure-hearted and pure-willed devotees, because by their influence, that purity also rubs off. It enters your heart too. So, yeah, we can absorb that mood. So I hope that help answer anything.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that we agree up to the point of liberation. So I'm wondering, when we meet somebody who's Mayavad, or basically everyone, well, how can we not feel like we're under attack?
Right.
How do we meet them where they agree with us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I was thinking is that, you can try and connect with them on the points that we do agree. Like, yeah, we've been chanting this Maha Mantra, and we really have been experiencing we're not this body, we're not the mind. But then you can't start getting into yeah, we're all one. It's then that's where we have the conflict, that we're all Brahman and we're just illusory. We're in a false, state right now. But when we become liberated from it, then we all become God again. So, yeah, I mean, unless you want to get into a debate, but generally in the public and in book distribution, you don't want to start fire and brimstoning people and that kind of thing. It doesn't look good for your other prospects for book distribution. You see two people, different spiritual groups yelling at each other. But yeah, I mean, when I was distributing books, generally, especially to younger people at colleges and things like that, I would try and click with them on what we both agree on, yeah, we're not the body, we're eternal, we're full of bliss, and only through spiritual life can we really attain that happiness, want to become free of this material bondage, material suffering. I mean, that's generally what would work with a new age or younger spiritual person. But then if you're talking to actual jnani, someone who's studied Shastra very deeply, an impersonal path, then it becomes very complicated, because they'll understand. I mean, they also understand for the most part what our differences in our philosophy are. But yeah, I mean, a lot of time there's not much that can be gained out of preaching to those kind of people, unless we're really powerful, like Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Prakashananda Saraswati. Then, of course, then we can make a difference. But generally, it's not. It's just a back and forth. You're wrong and I'm right. No, I'm right and you're wrong. No, So, yeah, that's something I was thinking. Trying to find that common ground, and then they feel more interested in what we're doing. A lot of times we trick people into taking our books, which is good, because we can find the ground that we agree on, and then say, yeah, just take the book and read it. And it's good because then they take the book, and a lot of the times people don't really understand philosophy properly. They're not Vedanta Sutra reading Mayavadis or this or that. They're just confused and they have some idea that impersonal, yeah, we're all God and that. But when Prabhupada's words come out so strong and so powerfully in his books, it challenges that, and many times it wins over. I had that experience. I mean, I had some very vague ideas, but when Prabhupada presents such a clear and undefeatable conclusion about spiritual life, it's like very hard to run away from it, So it's like transcendental trickery. It's very, it's good.
Wanted to say, remember one lecture of Srila Prabhupada, he's speaking about, you're mentioning that we should not see the devotional service as a burden given by the spiritual master or by Krishna, but actually something which is joyfully performed with great pleasure. So in this lecture, Srila Prabhupada is explaining how there are two words, Shri Vigraha, which are the deities, in Kalagraha, which means burden. And he was saying, if we don't have enough hearing and chanting in our spiritual life, or basically we don't have enough activity that gives us, energizing us, giving us enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness, then he was saying the worship of the deity or service of Krishna will become a big burden. And then we'll say, oh, why my Guru Maharaj put all this big burden on my shoulders?
Yeah.
This is what Srila Prabhupada was saying. So basically, in order to be able to have this vision when the spiritual master gives us something, we should have quite some time in our day engage in hearing or reading or chanting. This will give us the enthusiasm to accept devotional service with great enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's a really nice point. Yeah. It's like charging up the batteries. You can't expend energy if you don't have any.
I want to add something on this question regarding the Mayavadis. So in the Vedic culture, we have the proper way of presentation, which is called Panchanga Nyaya. That means you state your point, then you explain why what you're saying is true, and then you give your examples. And then the fourth part is where you bring it nearer to the person that you're talking to for his understanding, because he would have some objections. Obviously, the Mayavadis, they have some. And there you don't just match the people, but you try to show how what they are saying, it's already included in your position. And not only that, but it is it finds there its logical conclusion, which they are not necessarily able to perceive right now. So and then at the end, you basically repeat what you have said in the beginning. But then this time, probably you could also quote some Shastra to support it. So that's how you deal with the Mayavadis. Of course, what Prabhuji said, it's 100% correct. It's not our call always.
That's much more full explanation.
So
that's nice.
You could just try and see how it works. It doesn't work just.
Yeah.
I have one point on that Mayavadi. As I heard, like if the person says you're just bringing books with, like we're all one, so you can say, well, so why don't you open up your bank account with everyone?
Yeah, my spiritual master did that at a rock concert. There's a really funny story where someone said that. They're like, oh, but we're all one, we're all God. And then my Guru Maharaj said, if we're all God, then, your money is my money. your money is my money is your money. Then, why don't you open up your wallet and, give me all your money? And the guy's like realized he was caught, and he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I guess I'll do that. And he hands all his money over, which was his rent for the month. And then he leaves, and my grandma's just like, wow, this guy's so ridiculous. But the guy came back later, and he was like, actually, can I have some back? I need to, pay my rent. And my grandma said no. And then Prabhupada later heard about the story. He said yes, they're fools, and they won't be fooled. And so we tricked them. And he said, this is very good. Giriraj has, done a very good job. Okay, we can end here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.